So yeah, welcome everybody to today's webinar with a collaboration between three different groups. So ODIS, Organization to Decolonise International Schools. We have the alumni group from from UWCSEA Dover Campus, which are the DoBetterDover group, and also a student alumni group from the Overseas Family School in Singapore called OutForSoldarity, and we will introduce everyone in a bit more detail later on. So the overall topic for today is diversity, equity and inclusion in Singapore international schools. But before we go into the rest of the content of today's webinar, we just wanted to take a moment of silence just to think about all of the things that have been going on this year and are still occurring from the pandemic. Lots of people are going back into lockdown. People may have had friends or family that have been affected by coronavirus. And as the international community, when we're spread across the world, you know, we're far away from our families and friends. And mental health is something that we need to focus on. There's also, you know, there's been a lot of police brutality throughout the year in the US especially, and also in Nigeria with the End SARS movements. And there's been climate emergencies, lots of flooding in Bangladesh, and so many other things that have been going on. So we just wanted to take a minute to think about those things.
As well as the terrorist attacks in France and what has been less discussed, but you know, the backlash, racist backlash against the Arab community and the Muslim community in France, sort of police brutality, and there's just many things like that. And please feel free to add anything in the chat if there's anyone you personally want to commemorate, celebrate, or remember in this time of silence. Please feel free to put it in the chat.
So we'll start now. Okay. Thank you to those of you who've put stuff in the chat. So that's 1 minute now, and we will continue with the rest of the webinar. No, what is happening? Sorry.
No worries.
1 second, I'm really sorry. What is going
on? All right, so let's see. We've got 23 participants so far. Please feel free in the meantime to share with anyone who you would like to join. The event is available on Facebook and the link is directly available on there. We've also put the link in our website, which is in the bio of our various social media, so you can share it with anyone else. Alrighty.
Okay. So we just wanted to do a quick breakdown of today's event. So we'll first have a brief introduction to everybody who's here today. Then we'll discuss a bit about the conference expectations that we received through the registration form. Then we'll go into a bit about what ODIS is for those of you who don't know who we are. And then we will hear the presentations from our two student groups. And then we'll have some breakout rooms with some discussion questions where you can meet each other and, you know, talk about why you're here, what you're thinking about, and then we'll have closing and some time for questions at the end. And also about questions, if you have any questions for participants, please just put them in the chat and they can either answer you during or we will address the questions at the end. Okay.
All right, so this is just a really quick presentation of who's going to be here today. Our hosts are ourselves. My name is Swai, pronounced Swai. It's a Vietnamese name. And Clara, or Ana Clara Fortora Fernandez Reynolds. We are both the hosts representing Organization to Decolonise International Schools. And we'll be talking really quickly about what we do in a minute. And our guests are from the United World College Southeast Asia Dover Campus in Singapore is the DoBetterDover team who are going to be presenting today. And do you guys want to say a quick hello, like say your voice and your name? We've got Shirley, Alana, Ijaz, Shakura, Christy, Beverly, Kelly, Divya. I think not everyone is here yet. And then we've got the team from Overseas Family School in Singapore, or OFS, the OutForSolidarity team, with Abigail Go, Mikhail Lewis, Christina Vasandura, Shireen, Zen, Aish, Caroline. I'm sorry if I mispronounced any names, who are going to be presenting today as well. And yes, shall we go into the next slide?
So the conference expectations, we just wanted to show that we've listened and read what you've shared with us in the registration form, and give you a chance to look at what people have been expecting from us today.
Yeah, we've got a lot of teachers and educators, as well as many former students who are participating or who want a copy of the recording afterwards. So we're quite happy with the turnout so far.
So in introducing the ODIS today, we just wanted to give you a quote about decolonization from a lecturer at the University of Portsmouth who has done a lot of work on decolonization, specifically in her field of international development. And she even gave a speech to the International Baccalaureate back in 2012 about decolonizing storytelling. So I wonder what they had to say about that. But we just thought this quote was kind of very good at encompassing what decolonization is about and something to kind of set the tone for today. I'll just let you read it.
Yep, sorry. So decolonization is about power. It's about shifting a concentration of power from one place to another, or about diffusing it to different places. Decolonizing our minds is an endeavor that we must do with society as a whole in mind, and mostly it is hard work, day in and day out. And Clara has done a lot of really great research on this topic in a post that will be coming up on our social media very soon, hopefully. Okay, do you want to go?
Yeah, so ODIS, we're Organization to Decolonise International Schools. We've included our social media down there. We basically want to address the racism and other forms of discrimination in the international community, from all levels, from students to teachers and educators, up to the companies like CIS and the IB, and change the curriculums and all of that stuff, and also the kind of colonial roots of international education, which kind of started with missionaries going to other countries and spreading the Christian message, and there are some international schools which are actually founded on missionary schools in different parts of the world. So that's something that we work to highlight, and also to be a platform to share stories and highlight the work of student groups and different activists, like we're doing today. And yeah, this is just kind of a diagram which shows the intersections between inclusion, diversity, and equity, and how at the core of it you have belonging. So you really need to include all three parts of that to have a fully rounded experience.
Yep. We wanted to include this diagram because, you know, there are a lot of buzzwords that occur a lot on the internet, like all of these, and I think it's important to remember that they're all part of a big thing. They're not something that you can just use separately, and that they have nuances, as it shows in the diagram. Having one by itself creates big imbalance, and you need to have all of them. And I also forgot to cite the name of the person who created the diagram, but I'll put it in the chat as soon as I find it. As well as in the corner, you have our handle for our social media, where you can see our various posts and our network of alumni teams, and our website, which has our latest articles and podcasts.
But today is not about us, so we will move swiftly on now to hearing from the OutForSolidarity group. So we hand over to you guys.
So I think we're just going to introduce ourselves, each one of us. Shireen's coming later, so she might have to do the introduction a little bit later. My name is Caroline, and I recently graduated from my bachelor's degree, and I attended OFS, so Overseas Family School, from 2012 to 2016. So that was in my last 4 years of high school. And in my studies, I focused on psychology and business, and I'm especially passionate about diversity, inclusion, and cross-cultural understanding in the workplace setting, and within the context of the workplace.
Hi, I'm Ash. I recently graduated. I finished my undergrad from Boston University, where I studied international relations and French. I also attended OFS for the majority of my life, from 2002 up until 2016. And yeah, I'm quite excited to be here today and further on conversation.
And I'm Abigail. I attended OFS from elementary school up till our graduating year. So we all graduated together in the same year, 2016. I just graduated from, I just finished my master's degree in social and public policy. And I'm also interested in, passionate about inclusion and diversity and equality. So we're just gonna start off by giving a quick timeline of how this came to be, and actually, it would be more, it would make more sense if UWC went first, because I actually approached Shirley about starting our initiative first. We met through some mutual friends, and I saw that they had put up an Instagram post calling for participants into a survey. And so what the survey would do is an anonymous survey. We copied the same structure as the DoBetterDover team, just changed a few questions, and we have slight difference in the survey and the letter, but it's roughly the same. So an anonymous survey to collect experiences of students, past, present, and we got a whole range of people that graduated from all the way from 2000 and then up till they will graduate in 2027 or something. That's how we calculated who was actually participating. So we put up this Instagram post. You can just read it really quick. So this is just asking for survey results so that we could then write the letter. So that's the timeline of it. And then you can go next. So from those results, my teammates can.
All right, so I'll continue from here. So basically we got around 150 responses in our survey, and from that we went through the data and kind of created clusters of what the most common topics were, and we then narrowed it down to 6 broad topics that we decided to make as bullet points in our letter, and then each bullet point explain what the issue was, what we thought the best solution was. And then under it, we had evidence from the survey, specific quotes from students. Everything was anonymous, obviously. So we just had, brackets, this and this happened, X student number 120 or something. And then our letter was pretty long. We sent it to the management, we sent it to teachers, and I think to the Parents Association. So we tried to reach out basically every stakeholder that we could think of within the school. And so yeah, the 6 main things that we found were issues in our school specifically, where the first one was improving the support system available. So just when instances of racism happen, whether that be comments or actions or whatever, there was no one that kids could go to complain or to do anything about it. So then that was the first point. Then the second one was addressing the lack of education on explicit racism. And so basically we thought there's nothing that comes to prevent any of these actions. So usually you have a reaction, you always have, you have students that said, oh yeah, this happened, but nobody told me beforehand that would be an issue. So we had a lot of people confused about what the right terms were, or confused about when was it a funny joke or when was it just racist. So there was a lot of lack of education with the terms and all these things. So then, more specifically, then we had education on implicit biases and microaggressions, just because I think for many, me included, I didn't know what that meant for a very long time until I did a course in university where it was explained. And so yeah, just to understand what those terms meant and what they look like in real life so that you can identify behaviors. Which then ties in with number 4, which was the bystanders and reporting incidents to the school. So a lot of that is you obviously notice things that happen in school, but nobody really says anything. Maybe because they can't identify it, or maybe because they don't want to, also because there's a lot of social pressures within school systems. So we made that one point. And then number 5 was the problem with using blanket terms such as internationalism and diversity. That was specifically for our school because we also had something that was called Internationalism Award, which was given to students that were international, but nobody really knew what that meant, what that entailed. And it was just kind of like an issue that a few students brought up in the survey. And then the long-term goal, which was decolonizing the curriculum, was one of the main things that a lot of students brought up, which obviously is also why we're probably then met this group decided to work together, because I think that's the main long-term goal for all these schools, is to achieve this decolonization of the curriculum, but it is the most difficult step to take for a school. So these were the 6 demands that we had, and so yeah, and then the response will be presented by Ash. Yeah, so after sending out our letter, we got in touch with the chairwoman of our academic board, who was also our ex-high school principal, and their response was largely positive. She was very receptive towards our letter, and also said that a lot of our demands and requests were quite realistic and feasible, which was very great to hear from them. As you can see, after our Zoom call with the chairwoman, they had a board meeting, and this was their response, as you can see here. They basically broke it down into 4 different clear steps that they would be taking. So the first thing would be to undertake a review of the curriculum that was offered in the school in 2 ways. And it's really great that they took really concrete, or they're proposing to take it at least quite concrete measures and not just superficially agreeing to something. So over here, they had said that they would conduct an audit of the current units of work, just so
to allow for a more targeted inclusion of historical and current events that are being actively taught. And also they would provide a review of the available syllabuses or syllabi, and yeah, just review all the topics that they're being taught right now in school as well. And the second main thing that they would have done would be to undertake a review of the welfare provision across the school. So in throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school, they have different programs that are not just, so the education of racism would not just depend on changing the IB syllabus. It would be more undertaken from the school itself. So in these programs that they have throughout the different levels of school, they would address racism directly and allow students to identify racist attitudes and opinions and banter, and provide, as we had demanded from them, a safe and easily available way and space to report these racist incidents, and also just provide a space to educate students to learn that racism is never acceptable and how to hold each other accountable for their actions. And another really important thing that they have agreed to do would be to provide teacher training for Teacher Orientation Week as well, so that teachers can identify their own biases. We are all at an international school. Obviously, everyone is not perfect and everyone comes in with their own implicit biases. So this is very important for us. And this obviously allows us to safeguard our students better and provide training for appropriate responses when incidents do occur. And as an additional supplementary things that they could do, we also suggested to bring in to supplement the anti-racism education, to bring in guest speakers and to have grade level assembly items to address issues, and also to review the effectiveness and transparency of large scale events such as like the UN concerts, where we all participate in these cultural events from different cultures, but we don't truly understand what we're doing or what it means, and to actually provide justice to that properly. And also to provide more anti-racism focus within extracurricular activities that are available in school, and further support there as well. And in the response from the academic board, they believe that all of these objectives could be achieved within a period of 1 year, but it was also very important or good to see that they also recognized that it was not meant to be just a simple quick fix sort of thing that they would just like hit certain targets on a bucket list. They also said that they would record their progress by maintaining this as an agenda item for their board meetings, and they would review it on a quarterly basis. So it was good to see a long-term response being implemented as well. And yeah, and I think Abby will talk about the challenges and achievements that we've faced.
Yeah, so we were very encouraged by the response that we got, and that's in the achievements as well. But I'll start with the challenges. I think for anyone out there that is trying to start their own initiative, or any other students that are in this chat or alumni, I think clear line of communication is really important. And if anything, I think troubleshooting misunderstanding. So we should always be, as a group or as an initiative, you should be very open to wanting to clear any mistakes. So that's just a side of empathy and trying to communicate as clearly as possible so that nothing is misunderstood. I think a challenge for us was that I used I used my personal account on Instagram in the first slide that you saw, instead of a team account, which ended up being a mistake for us because it came across as something that I was doing alone, and it maybe sparked some debate, which isn't always a bad thing. But I would suggest to other people in the future to use a team account or possibly that kind of thing, so that your teammates are in on it as well, and it's not a targeted, it's one person. I'd also say as alumni, we are limited in our current action. We obviously don't go to the school anymore. That doesn't mean we can't do anything. It just means that we don't know everything that's going on currently to the best of our abilities as a current student does. That also caused some miscommunication, and I think getting in touch with current students is really important. Knowing what's going on the ground is very important, because our experiences from 5 years ago now might be very different from experience of someone that's currently in school, and that's also a learning process. So that's also under the second last point, personal learning and teaching as well. It's hard to like learn something and teach it at the same time. So knowing your stuff, I guess. But that always comes with experience. Another thing would be there will inevitably be power relations between different groups, teachers, alumni, and current students. We all have a different position to play when we're communicating with each other. I think just to be aware of it, there's nothing bad about it. Just to be aware that there are this exists when communicating, and just to be as clear as possible and to be understanding on both sides. Then the last challenge goes back to the we're not current students thing, which is what now? We're not in school. We try to communicate as often as we can with the current anti-racist working groups that are in school currently, but we are not always in the loop, and that's okay as well, because that our main goal was to evoke change, evoke some conversation, get it started, some action. So I think there is some distance between us and them, and that's okay. So I guess it's a challenge. All of these things are challenges, but also like kind of like duh, but also yeah, not all are bad things. And then we have achievements. I think we're quite proud of our survey and the findings that we got. Not proud. Obviously, it's very terrible, the experiences of racism and discrimination, but we are happy that it actually brought some form of change. And then we have the response and ongoing conversation. We've actually been approached to start something called, to help with something called the University Preparation Program. That would just be a program in high school to help prepare students going abroad, specifically to any countries, but from our experiences, Western countries, so UK, US, Europe, Australia maybe. So that would just, that was also one of our findings, that we as alumni felt like we were in a bubble of sorts in our international school, and bursting out of the bubble, we're shocked to find what we found. So that preparation program is something that we're working on at the moment. And we also want to continue meeting with staff. And we're also very heartened to see that staff in middle and high school specifically have created their own anti-racist working groups. Certain teachers have really, or staff members have really risen to the occasion, and there's a lot of positive responses there. Also the students, they have their own anti-racist working group. they have their own survey that's going on, because we are alumni and we created the survey. We have the data. We have not chosen to share this data with the school, and so I guess the students themselves, they want to create a more current survey, so something that's just applies to current school, kind of what's happening as it happens rather than in retrospect. And then lastly, we had a very positive response from the head of the parent association, who was all for it, and wanted to create certain activities within the parent association to look into biases they may have within the parents. So that was really positive and amazing. Yeah, to hear from them, and we're still it is a process. Our head of school emphasized this many times. It's not she didn't want to just say, oh, I'm just going to change one word and then, you know, racism will be gone. She's like, I know that's not what this is about. This is about the implicit biases we have, certain things. So the resources we found, as we learn, we share, and as they learn, they share with us, and it's an ongoing process. So, but yeah, that's all we have.
Does anyone else from the OFS team want to add anything? I'm really impressed and really happy that you guys have had such an overall positive response from your school board and from the parents. I mean, because we heard about it before. This account, like ODIS, Organization to Decolonise International Schools, we began our work in, was it the 5th of June, Clara? And then I think it wasn't very long after that we found OutForSolidarity and started following their work. So it was quite nice, you know, in real time, as they say, following their progress. And I'm really glad that even on a student level, they're creating their own anti-racist working groups. I think there's a lot of potential for collaboration as well. And yeah, and I'm looking forward to, you know, if possible, seeing that work being shared more on your account and things like that. Does anyone else want to ask any questions? This is the last slide, is that right, for the OFS team?
Yeah, but we're happy to discuss any other things in either in the breakout rooms or any of the other questions that might have been asked.
Mm-hmm.
I think there was one about, has there been racist behavior at this school in the past, and is it being acknowledged? I think it's being acknowledged in assemblies and on a broad level, being acknowledged that it does exist and it's happening. And parents are being informed of this and being kept in the loop as well. Staff have been telling them what kind of discussions they're having. I've already heard of certain subjects, including anti-racist education into their curriculums, whether it be just a unit on it or within the units that they already have, whether it be geography or Spanish or any subject they could have. So okay. They're already beginning to do it, and it's very encouraging.
Yeah, that's really cool to see. Plus, they're not in quarantine there, right? All the classes are in person.
Yeah.
Okay. If anyone else wants to jump in and ask questions, like from the participants, like don't hesitate to unmute yourself and, you know, interact.
Yeah, or put a comment in the chat box.
Yeah, if you're shy.
Yeah, I also just wanted to jump in and say, yeah, it sounds really great what you've been doing, and having that like symbiotic relationship where you're learning from each other and going together and taking it step by step, I think is something that's so important, and being transparent, because we can't all know everything from the get-go. And yeah, so thank you very much for sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you everyone for speaking and taking the time to prepare a presentation. I was also wondering really quickly, when you created the initial survey, how quickly did it sort of spread out among alumni, or did it only spread out among students? Like how quick was it?
How quick was it? Yeah, it did happen all quite fast. We didn't actually wait very long before creating our letter, so we only waited a week and a half. We wanted to get it as soon as possible. The reason for this was the timing. School and training begins again in August, and we didn't want, actually that was the last week of school, so the timing is very important. So this was a bad timing and a good timing kind of thing, because school is about to end and we wanted everyone to be in school when we sent it out. At the same time, that's a very stressful experience for staff who have a lot on their plate when the school year is ending, and to stepping into their shoes, it's not easy to receive such a heavy survey or a heavy letter with a lot of points and a lot of it's opening a lot of conversations on the last day of school. But the reason why we did that is because we knew that the board was going to meet in the coming week. So the survey results were actually cut off by us. It might not have been the best idea, because experiences should continue to be shared. And it was open, but we didn't use all of the rest of the results. So the letter we wrote, that was a group decision to get it out as soon as possible.
Okay, good. Well, thank you for that. I think we should move on to the UWC group, because some people have to leave on the hour, and so yeah, and we can keep the questions for later. Alana, do you want to introduce the Do Better Dover team, or anyone else, whoever?
Yeah, that sounds good. Thank you, Suga and Clara, for organizing this. I think it's wonderful that we are having these conversations. It's also great to also meet the OFS team. I know we've all been in touch somewhat, a lot of the international schools in Singapore, and I think it's fantastic that we're starting discussion in a place which has such a unique dynamic of expats and local people, and international schools plays a very interesting role in Singapore society. So I think it's great we're starting here. I'd like to welcome my co-members of the team, Shirley and Ajaz. The rest cannot make it, unfortunately, but we are a good cross-section of the team, so maybe we all want to introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Shirley. Nice to meet everyone.
And my name is Ajaz. Nice to meet everyone.
And yeah, and you can see that we're all based across the world. Shirley was born in Indonesia and attended UWC from 2014 to 2016, when she graduated. Now she's in New York and completing undergraduate degree at NYU in Media, Cultural and Communications. And I'd also like to give her credit and say she's one of the brainchilds of this movement in the first place. None of it would have been possible without her, as well as a few of our other core members of the team who aren't here. But shout out to them. And as you can see, he's also a passionate British filmmaker. He's doing some exciting project at the moment, which I'm sure he can't tell us about. And he graduated in 2017 and is living in London. I'm also living in London myself, where I'm currently a consultant. And amongst some of the other work that I do in terms of diversity, it's one of the main subjects I study at university, both at undergraduate and postgraduate levels, looking at a lot of critical race theory, race studies in the context of both old former colonies, as well as the UK and the US. And I'm also heading up the diversity initiative at my workplace currently, which is also exciting to compare how these look and how these measure up against each other. You could go to the next slide.
Yep. This is the next slide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So should we talk about this? Yeah.
I'll take this slide. So our campaigning really began following the BLM protests after George Floyd, and one of our team members, Juan, described the racism that he experienced and witnessed at the school in detail. So when this happened, I reached out to Kelly and Divya, two of our other co-founders, and it really just began with a conversation and thinking about, like, what can we do? What can we do that
involves like action and not just kind of like thinking about like, oh, that's so sad, but like, guess we can't do anything about it. So we really decided to just put out an anonymous survey to ask past and current students to open up about their experience witnessing and experience like personal acts of racism by other students, teachers, and members of the community. So pretty quickly we began to see patterns. And it was during this process that we also included like Alana and Beverly in part of the organizing team, as well as other writers, data analysts, proofreaders, to kind of assess that all of this information that we were getting in such like a quick and succinct amount of time. So the patterns that we started noticing were that despite South Asian students making up the majority of our student body, they were being subject to racist comments and behaviors at like an alarming rate. And this kind of demonstrated to us the insidiousness of whiteness at UWCSEA as an institution. Despite efforts and like kind of international thinking about how to be inclusive, this thing could happen at UWC, and it was considered to be like one of the schools that is the most like diverse and accepting of differences, yet this could still happen. How and why? And other things just like microaggressions, favoritism, that was probably subconscious but just happened anyway, and why, how to unlearn that, and a lot of people feeling like even if they experienced racism and came forward about it, nothing would ultimately be done. And a lot of people who felt like they had not fully comprehended the trauma and experience that they had at the school until after they left and got the time to reflect and understand the microaggressions and the kind of slights that they received. So by July, we submitted a full proposal to the school and launched a co-sign campaign that now 400 members of our community have demonstrated their support for. And we also have representation on the team with working with the school where Shakur and Ijaz have joined.
So in summary of our asks and the findings that we found, we did include our link for anyone who would like to look at it in further detail. We ended up writing actually quite a big proposal that broke down a lot of the findings, used personal accounts that were anonymized, and really tried to both explain and analyze what was happening at the school. Some of the stats that we pulled out from there was that of about 199 respondents, afterwards there were about 230, but our data analysis process had to kind of get started. So out of those initial respondents, 87 mentioned experiencing or witnessing a racist incident, 49 mentioned experiencing or witnessing this and seeing no repercussions to transgressor, 38 mentioned witnessing or experiencing discrimination against someone else for their gender or sexuality, and there was also 36 who mentioned experiencing or witnessing racism or racial biases from a teacher or member of staff, which is a number that we found particularly shocking because a lot of us understood UWC to be a place where all staff as well as the student body would be embodying these values that we have of diversity, equality, peace, and so to see that this was so pervasive within not just the student body, but also the teachers who are meant to be expounding these values was really, really troubling to us. And so that was just a snapshot for some of it. A lot of them, also 119, so almost 50%, felt that the education ultimately did not actually allow them to meaningfully engage in discussions around race, class, and privilege. Just particularly troubling for us as well, because as a school and a movement that purports to create the next sort of change makers in the world, how could we not be having these discussions at the school? How could we not be addressing these biases and interrogating these parts of our identities, and moving on to a world where we're supposed to be aware of these and we're supposed to be creating change? So these were proposed solutions after doing a lot of research and getting a lot of survey results from participants. So the first one was to take immediate steps to diversify faculty and leadership. We found that basically almost 100% of school leadership was either white or white passing. And the vast majority of teachers as well were also white or white passing, with only 7 teachers in the school who were Black. And whilst we had this, we also found that the vast majority of staff that weren't teachers and weren't in those positions of power, secretaries, janitors, that kind of thing. And I'm sure the OFS guys and team can corroborate this at their school as well. But those members of staff were almost entirely people of color. And so already we could show how there was this unconscious effect growing and an unconscious impression on students that people of color were ones who weren't teachers, who weren't people in positions of power. And so this was something that we really wanted to emphasize. 2 was to implement compulsory bias and UWC values training for faculty and leadership. We were shocked to learn that this was not currently the case, and we felt this was a very important part of ensuring that our values and that our movement was top down and really being expounded properly to the student body. Number 3 was implement an anti-racism accountability system, including an anonymous reporting system for staff and students that would be monitored independently, and also a committee that would monitor and drive all high-level anti-racism and discrimination reforms, something that would bring the accountability level independent of the school and involve all stakeholders. Number 4 was to modify policy to better protect students and faculty of minority backgrounds, including the disciplinary policies and focusing on an education approach to discipline. So something that wouldn't just give people detention or fire them, but instead really help them understand why the actions were wrong, or how they can improve their actions in the future, and understand, empathize with people of color and people who be from minority groups. We also asked for diversification of school curricula from K-12, kindergarten, all the way up to IB, and this included better utilization of pastoral and tutor group time to allow more discussions and inclusion of more history, literature, and thought leadership from people of color. We also recommended reviewing school activities for authentic engagement with service and diversity. We found a troubling amount of accounts that said that the way that we approach service and diversity now was very much from the lens of white savior complexes, and the savior complex of people from international schools going into communities to do better. But what sort of meaningful representation was that? What sort of power relations was that teaching kids as well? Because if our service was something that was for us, for our learning, for our growth, and not for the community, then that ultimately was an incredibly selfish and savior complex position to take on. And finally, we also had additional recommendations for people to take into consideration. So celebrating, the Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination, gauging more interest in expanding language offerings to really try and emphasize to students that the Western education, the Western thought leadership was not what the main priority would be, and that the global approach to education was really, really what we wanted to expound as part of the movement. So we can go to the next slide. And Ijaz will take this bit.
Great. So the main response from the school has been attention and support from the Board of Governors, which is of course a great step towards actual change from basically diversifying the system. And as well as this, we've managed to create a receipt of proposal and communications with the school and the leadership and staff. Again, creating a nice communication link between both the staff and the team allows us to actually get an inside knowledge of the changes that can and will be implemented within the school. And as a consequence of this, we managed to create a diversity task force at UWCSEA, which is again a collection of students as well as passionate people who want to actually diversify the college, as well as actually talk about in-depth issues and issues of racism that actually occur within UWC. The parallel efforts with younger current student body and at UWC and UWC East allows us to basically also have students talk about these issues as well. Getting a younger perspective on these racial issues is something that is almost essential to actually understanding the effects that it has on children. And since it's happening at both UWCs, it's also great to create collaboration between both sectors. And what's next for us is basically we want to create constant communication between the schools, as well as updating alumni and student bodies and signees on our progress, and continue to hold ourselves and the school accountable for their actions.
So we decided to kind of not write the challenges in the bullet points here, because we also recognize that as part of an ongoing conversation, we wanted to keep the conversation fairly general, and based around advice on how to go about it. Also because whilst there's a lot of advances being made, we know that it's still a confidential discussion that we're having between the school and ourselves, as well as other stakeholders, and we don't want to step on anyone's toes, basically. So we decided to kind of discuss this together. Shirley, do you want to start talking about some of the challenges we faced?
Yeah, I'll just talk about just kind of prevalent themes involved in our process. And I think a lot of our issues sound pretty similar to that of OFS. One of the initial challenges that we had in this process was kind of dealing and mediating and having conversations around different people's responses to our efforts. I think at the beginning, a lot of people didn't understand what it is that we were trying to work for and just thought that we were trying to hate on the school, but that's definitely not the case. A lot of us had good experiences there as well. And the reason that we are working so hard to create change is because of our love for the school rather than because of our hate. I don't think we would put this much effort in if we didn't care for the community that exists as a result of attending the school, right? But there were a lot of people who are not as open to our movement, especially at the beginning. A lot of comments like, but UWC is the least racist school, right? But that was exactly our point. It is supposed to be the most accepting school, yet all of these really horrifying experiences continued to happen. Seeing responses of people from like class of 1996 all the way to 2024 who haven't even graduated yet, there were patterns in what was happening. So we knew it to be true. And a lot of people who also experienced nostalgia at the school did not feel like they could relate to the experience of like witnessing or kind of experiencing racism. So overall, just kind of working with that, listening to people who had positive experiences as well as those who had negative and mixed experiences, and trying to mediate that and kind of consolidate that into a proposal. I think another challenge for us was communication. Abigail kind of spoke about their issues as well, and I think that was similar to us, where some things kind of get miscommunicated and misconstrued on both sides because of the nature of how we're communicating, mainly on email. I think a lot can get lost when you're not speaking face-to-face with people. And then overall, just dealing with institutions, handling and kind of working to talk to people, different types of people, having a large number of stakeholders, people with different ideas. And I think additionally, like we also lack an understanding of what it takes to run an institution and what is involved in that. So kind of trying to like bridge that gap as well. Like we can speak pretty confidently about our experiences as students and as alumni who have reflected on our experience, but not as teachers or as current students there. I would also consider whiteness to be a major obstacle in our progress. Asking those who are benefited by whiteness to unlearn concepts and ideas that have been serving them for a long time. For example, things like color blindness. This doesn't serve people of color, nor does it help non-POCs understand what anti-racist work is. And on top of unlearning, also maybe trying to like educate for current and maybe more radical ideas as well. Yeah. And if Alana wants to add anything else.
Yeah, I think it was definitely also the nature of our school, which is, for those who don't know, split into two campuses, UWC East and UWC Dover. There was a lot to do in terms of the institutional structure and politics of running a school that we had to navigate. And certain stakeholders providing a lot of support, and then meeting resistance in others, and trying to understand the ways in which these different stakeholders communicated and prioritized things was something that we had to learn how to navigate as well. And so I think as alumni, as young people, it's very easy to understand and to think that a lot of people in this day and age think the same, and a lot of people who are striving for change think the same. And I think sorting between intentions versus current mindsets and actual thinking ideas for solutions is a conversation that we've had to learn how to understand and navigate. And I think it's been a very valuable ongoing effort, and we really it's been a lot of learning in terms of dealing with the current school. And so in terms of our achievements, we already talked about our survey and our co-sign campaign, which we are continuing to push out as well as still, let people co-sign as we update the alumni body and people who have co-signed on our progress. We really want to make sure that as a team and as a stakeholder being represented, we want to keep ourselves and the school accountable to the alumni body. And so this is something that we're going to keep doing. We also have a representative on diversity task force at the school, which they created in light of these movements. And we have direct communications and alliances with both our sister campus efforts, as well as current students who are running their own surveys, running their own sort of working groups and things at the same time. And I think importantly, we've also gained a lot of support from current and past board members, as well as the Parent-Teacher Association. We've had quite a lot of outpouring support from parents who have been distraught at the idea that their children could have been subject to these things. And, a lot of them also had experiences of racism themselves. And so it's been a very, very important and unifying approach, I think, that we've all found solidarity in this message. And we also have a direct line of communication to our task force project manager, as well as the school president. So it's been great to see that they're paying attention to the work and to the perspectives that we're trying to represent. We can move on, by the way.
So thank you very much, Ilana, Ijaz, and Shirley for sharing all of that with us. It's really great to hear, the two different movements and how you've both had different experiences. Obviously, as your institutions are very different, especially with UWC, as it puts itself kind of like the IB as like one of those holistic education things where everyone's globally minded. And
it's a very big movement.
And then seeing how actually when you look at the other side of the coin, it's a different story to what they're telling everybody in their prospectus.
If I may, sorry, quickly make a comment here. I think something that we found in our survey and in our conversations that the UWC movement was created in the wake of World War II, and it's still a fantastic way and a fantastic experience to bring people together in terms of diversity. But the civil rights movement, everything has moved on so much from World War II, and I think it's important that we keep ourselves accountable to the changing times and making sure that we keep pushing for better, not resting on laurels.
Definitely. Absolutely. And I'm glad that you mentioned like the origins of your school, because it's something that a lot of people I think could be very interesting to find out, like why was your school founded, who founded it, and what for, and for whose agenda possibly, and things like that. And thank you all again for speaking and for preparing. I know it's not easy to speak in a conference. It can be a bit nerve-wracking. Clara, shall we move on to the breakout rooms?
Yeah. So I know it's already been an hour since we started. So if people need to leave, then you can leave. But we still have breakout rooms, which we wanted to do. We have a few guiding questions which you can use, but this time is really just to talk to each other a bit more about the content that you've heard today. If you have any questions for the presenters, they will be in the rooms, so you can ask them questions that you may have.
These are just suggestions.
Yeah, we'll show the questions now and we'll put them in the chat. So yeah, we just want to make sure everyone, lets everybody speak, be respectful of each other's ideas. We're not all on the same page. We all have different backgrounds, and we won't be recording the breakout room, so I'll pause the recording now. 1 second. And
yeah, just follow us for more of our work. So Yasmin has asked, Is there a reason results were not shared by DoBetterDover? I think you mentioned that in your presentation. As they mentioned to us, it was kind of delicate about what they could openly discuss and what they preferred to keep under wraps. I don't know if anyone wants to speak out about that.
Not necessarily our preference about what we want to keep under wraps, but so much as our involvement with the school and how to maintain a positive, productive relationship with them, and how, in terms of how much we can say. But I think to answer Yasmin's question, I don't know if I really have an answer for it, but I think that is a very difficult thing to address. I think including students definitely does help in creating more of a sense of trust. I think more than anything, it's transparency that really creates a sense of trust, because I think especially in our experience with UWC, we didn't know how much they were like keeping from us in terms of like, okay, this happened at the school, like in what ways have they just kind of like brushed it aside and not addressed issues of racism in the past. And that's where our mistrust came from with the school in terms of how they deal with it, because in their history, they haven't dealt with it or they've ignored it. So I think maybe some sort of transparency on like what you're trying to do, what your goals are and what your aims are, perhaps can help with creating more of a sense of trust.
Just to add, I also think transparency, again, is the most important thing. So if you make sure to tell your students who exactly is reading what they're writing and who exactly is going to work with that information, that might help, because it just allows the student to prepare their answers better, and they might not necessarily write the whole paragraph, but they'll give you the general idea of what happened, but without, you know, it keeps them safe in a sense of, if you have other students involved, you don't want them to be able to identify the person that wrote that anonymous answer. So just make sure that everyone knows exactly who's going to read this information. And if you don't want to disclose everything as a participant, then you have the choice not to. That I would say, but then it's fine. I think I agree with Shirley, definitely include students, just because it gives you maybe a different perspective that you haven't thought of before.
Yeah, I can see an issue happening if, say, like someone who students know is writing the survey but have previously like had, I don't know, just kind of problematic interactions with the students. I think that would be a huge barrier to open up about their experiences because they don't feel safe. So I think transparency and creating a comfortable and inclusive and just environment and just a space that allows for that vulnerability is super important.
Yeah, and I think Yasmin was especially talking about this because she is, I already forgot the title, but she is leading the work for, here we go, diversity, equity, and inclusion at the Geneva International Schools. And since she is neither a student nor a teacher, she's in this sort of in-between state and she's trying to avoid mistrust when she's creating these surveys. She's wondering, would including other students in the survey help gain the trust so that she would, you know, be able to glean more information and have better research results?
I think that I don't know if it would be wiser not to ask students themselves about it, but I also just like thinking back to my time as a high school student, I don't know how I would feel about a friend or like a peer reading things that maybe I experience. I don't know if other people agree or disagree. I think that might cause discomfort in terms of like social circles or things like that.
Definitely. Well, maybe like there's also in terms of writing the survey themselves, if you know that people who are students and who understand your situation wrote the questions, you know, knowing exactly the audience that we're addressing, I think that would help as well. But yes, and I guess for Yasmin in particular, there's that challenge of trying to establish, you know, a reputation and identity. Yeah, as Caroline said, in creating the questions, but yeah, establishing an identity in the community as someone that the students can trust, someone who doesn't, so to speak, tattle on the other teachers.
I was also just, oh, yeah.
Oh, just one more thing to add, that I agree with Caroline, include students in creating questions, but keep the answers to yourself. But I think what I've learned in this process is how much of a support system your team that you're collaborating with in your campaigning group is. And it is a lot to mediate other people's trauma. It is a lot to take on that role and that responsibility and that pressure. So I would advise for anyone who is trying to campaign for change and is responsible in like leading and guiding that, that you have a strong support system of people that you can also talk to and collaborate with, because I think it can be a lot.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on the same sentiment. You're dealing with like a lot of sensitive information, and there are people's lives at stake in some cases. So I think we're just grateful to have like a good group that we can trust the people who are in the group. Obviously, we can discuss within ourselves the data that was collected, but never disclose outside of that. And I think keeping that information secret, and yeah, just there's a lot of trust, I guess, with certain things, but also
can you hear me?
Yeah.
I hope that you can hear me, and thanks so much for all these answers, because it makes a lot of sense. The only struggle I've had with that is I've had obviously students come to me with stories, and for me these stories have been very important. You know, if we did get the unanimous approval of our board for many initiatives, I just feel like some of the teachers, non-teachers, direction and board would be a lot more prone to accepting that this is an issue and we need to address it if these short stories could be shared. So I'm kind of in the middle of you know, collecting stories and wanting them to stay anonymous and guaranteeing that, and you know, hoping that some will step up and allow these stories to be shared. So yeah, I think it's about creating trust with the staff and the students, but I do see some brave people at our school who are willing to share their story with some important people. So yeah, I want to thank you for the answers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Yasmin. And I think we're going to wrap up. Is that okay with you, Clara?
Yeah, that's fine with me.
All right. Do you want to say anything?
I just want to say thank you to everybody who stayed till the end. It's been almost 2 hours now, which is a lot longer than we initially specified, but that's great. I think there's been a lot of really good discussion, and it's really nice to see everybody, you know, discussing these things, because we've all come to this from different backgrounds and different experiences, and so learning from each other it's always a good opportunity. So yeah, thank you.
I'm very happy with the progress that your teams have made. So yeah.
So feel free to check out social media of everybody involved. Thank you all for being here today, and we will hopefully this recording will work and we'll get it up on the internet to be shared with everybody, and we'll send a follow-up email. So yeah, thank you everybody so much for supporting us as well, as this is our first event. So thank you very much to OFS and OutForSolidarity people and DoBetterDover for participating. We really appreciate your work and for joining us here.
Yeah. So everyone, you know, good luck surviving lockdown or not. If you're not under lockdown, take care of yourselves and your mental health, and never stop asking yourself questions and challenging your own viewpoints. Right. Have a nice evening or afternoon or night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.